I need to start with the moment my body understood what my mind kept trying to soften. I was loyal to someone who was comfortable losing me. His name was Marcus. We lived together in a narrow terraced house on a quiet street in Peckham. The kind of street where neighbors nodded politely but never really spoke. Where the houses looked warm from the outside and quietly heavy once you stepped in. Our place had creaky stairs, pale walls we never finished decorating, and a living room window that faced a row of identical brick houses. From the outside, nothing looked wrong. From the inside, something had been missing for a long time. I remember the exact night the realization settled into my chest. It was a Thursday in early November, cold enough that the air felt sharp when you breathed it in. I had just come home from my sister's flat in Greenwich after a long conversation that left me emotional and raw. I walked through the front door holding that fragile feeling you carry when you trust someone to catch it. Marcus was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. The glow from the screen lit his face. I told him something personal. Something I hadn't said out loud before. My voice was soft, careful, like I was placing something breakable between us. He nodded, said okay, went back to typing. That was it. No questions. No pause. No curiosity. No sense that what I had just shared mattered enough to interrupt his evening. I stood there longer than necessary, waiting for something else to happen. Waiting for him to look up. Waiting for my words to echo back to me in some way. When they didn't, I smiled and said I was going to take a shower. In the bathroom, I locked the door and leaned my forehead against the mirror. I didn't cry, I didn't even feel angry. I just felt smaller. Like something important had quietly slipped out of reach. I told myself not to make it into more than it was. I told myself he was busy, tired, preoccupied. I told myself love did not need constant attention to survive. I had gotten very good at telling myself things. I had been loyal to Marcus for years before that night. Loyal in the ways people do not applaud. Loyal in the ways that never show up in photographs or anniversary posts. Loyal in the slow, invisible ways that reshape who you are over time. I learned his routines better than my own. I knew which mornings he needed silence. I knew which evenings he wanted distraction. I knew how to read the smallest changes in his tone. I adjusted myself accordingly. I became careful with my needs. I edited them down until they felt reasonable, palatable, easy to digest. I stopped saying I feel lonely and started saying I am just tired. I stopped saying I need more from you and started saying it is not a big deal. I told myself I was being understanding, mature, emotionally intelligent. But what I was really doing was making myself easier to keep. Most nights followed the same rhythm. Dinner eaten on the sofa, a show playing in the background, Marcus scrolling on his phone. Me pretending not to notice how little we spoke. Sometimes our legs touched. Sometimes they didn't. When they did, it felt incidental, like furniture brushing against furniture. I miss being seen, not dramatically, not desperately, just quietly. I miss the feeling of someone noticing the change in my voice, asking follow-up questions, leaning in instead of drifting away. There were moments when I almost said something, when the words sat right behind my teeth. Do you still feel connected to me? Do you notice how far apart we feel? Do you miss me even when I am right here? But every time, fear stepped in. Fear of being too much, fear of sounding needy, fear of creating tension that I would then feel responsible for fixing. So, instead, I made tea. I asked about his day. I swallowed the ache and called it patience. Loyalty became my identity. I was the steady one, the forgiving one, the one who understood, the one who stayed. Marcus never raised his voice at me. He never insulted me. He never told me my feelings were wrong. He did not have to. The absence of response did the work for him. I remember one morning standing in the kitchen, sunlight coming through the window, dust floating in the air. I was watching him make coffee. He looked comfortable, grounded, at ease. I realized something then that made my stomach drop. If I left, his life would continue almost unchanged. That thought stayed with me longer than it should have. We went to a friend's birthday party in Brixton a few weeks later. Music was loud. People were laughing. Couples leaned into each other in familiar ways. I stood next to Marcus, holding my drink, feeling oddly alone in a crowded room. Someone asked us how long we had been together. Marcus answered easily, smiled, put an arm around my shoulder for the duration of the conversation. When it ended, his arm dropped back to his side. I felt like a role he remembered to play when required. That night, lying in bed beside him, I stared at the ceiling and tried to remember the last time I felt truly chosen. Not accommodated. Not assumed. Chosen. I could not. There is a particular loneliness that comes from being emotionally responsible for a relationship that two people are meant to hold. It is exhausting. It is confusing. It makes you doubt your own instincts. I started wondering if I was asking for too much. If this was just what adult relationships looked like. If wanting emotional presence meant I was unrealistic. I minimized myself further. I stopped bringing up things that hurt. I stopped expecting repair. I stopped believing my inner world deserved care. Not because Marcus told me to stop, but because experience taught me it would not lead anywhere. The breaking point did not come with a fight. It came one evening in late March. We were walking home from dinner near Dulwich Park. The air smelled like damp earth in early spring. I slipped my hand into his out of habit. He held it, but loosely. Distracted, I slowed my pace slightly. He kept walking. My hand slipped out of his. He did not notice right away. When he finally did, he glanced back and reached for my hand again, almost absent-mindedly. And in that moment, something inside me settled into clarity. He was not afraid of losing me, not because I did not matter, but because I had made myself easy to keep. I realized then that my loyalty had removed any urgency to care for me. That my patience had taught him he did not need to adjust. That my silence had convinced him everything was fine. There is a quiet devastation in knowing someone believes your staying is guaranteed. I stayed a few months longer after that. Not because I did not know the truth, but because leaving meant grieving the future I had imagined. The version of him I kept hoping would return. The version of myself who believed love meant endurance. The conversation happened on a Sunday morning. Gray sky, cold light through the window. We sat at the kitchen table where so many quiet evenings had passed. I told him I felt alone. I told him I felt unseen. I told him I had been shrinking. He listened. He looked surprised. He said he did not realize. I believed him. That was the moment I understood something else. He did not realize because he did not have to. I packed my things slowly. Each folded shirt felt like a small goodbye. I moved into a small flat share in Leytonstone. The room was tiny. The walls were bare. The mattress was thinner than I was used to. But the space felt honest. The first night alone, I sat on the floor and cried. Not because I missed Marcus, but because I missed myself. I missed the version of me who spoke freely, who laughed loudly, who did not calculate every feeling before expressing it. I miss the woman who believed her needs were valid without justification. Leaving did not make me instantly stronger. It made me quieter at first, tender, unsure, but slowly, something returned to me. My voice. I learned that loyalty without boundaries is not love, it is self-abandonment. That staying loyal to someone who is comfortable losing you will eventually teach you to betray yourself. If someone is comfortable losing you, it does not mean you were not enough. It means the relationship stopped requiring effort to keep you. And that is not something you solve by staying longer. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is choose yourself, even when it breaks your heart. If this story feels familiar, you are not alone. If it stirred something tender in you, let this reach someone else who needs it. Subscribe to the Heart's Archive for more intimate stories about love, self-respect, and emotional clarity. And if you feel ready, share your thoughts in the comments. Being seen can be the beginning of healing. Until next time, choose yourself gently.